Everybody, it's Margo here at My Favorite Quilt Store, and we are starting on My First Quilt Class. And so I wanted to give you, I know we've done the cutting and we've done the selection of fabric, and so now we're getting ready to start the actual sewing of the project. So this is like, I think, the third segment that you'll be seeing of this particular project. So what I wanted to go over first was testing out your seams to make sure you're sewing a good 1/4 inch. So depending upon your machine, you have a number of different feet you can use to sew with. My favorite has the flange on the side of it, our guide on the foot. I find that one for me to be the most accurate and being able to sew the fastest and most accurate I can. So that's the foot I have chosen today to use. So in your kit, you're going to be receiving this index card, and you're going like, why did I get this index card? And the reason you got it is because these lines are a perfect 1/4 inch away from one another. So you can check your 1/4 inch seam by sewing on this card. It will not dull your needle. You can have your, I would like you to have it threaded, so we'll have thread in this card, but a lot of times I'll pull this card back out. If I'm using a different foot or I have something else new that I'm doing, I will pull this card back out for reference. But then if, let's say, I know this project is going to be an ongoing project that I may not finish and have to come back to, and I want to know something the next time I start this project, I'll keep notes on this card as to what thread I'm using, if it's a 50 weight thread, a 40 weight thread, if I'm using a special size of needle, if I'm using an 18 or what size needle I'm using, or if I have any special things that I've done to the sewing machine that I'm doing when I'm making a quilt, I will write it on this index card and keep it in with the project. So it'll be easy reference for when I restart it again, and I'm not starting completely over trying to decide, gosh, what thread did I really have out when I was using this? Because I've got a couple of beiges that are really, really close, and so I like to make sure I'm using the same thread throughout when I'm doing a long-term project. Especially if I have applique in it, I'm going to be appliquing a piece. When I first start, I will keep the color of the name of the color of the thread and what stitch I've done and the number of the stitch that I'm using. So in any special things that I do to the machine to make it work, because I want to be able to reference that in case I need to do it again. So anyway, let's get started. All right, the first thing we're going to do is practice sewing on the line. So I'm going to get my glasses so I can see. And we are going to line the index card up where the flange is just on this or to the side of it. And as you can see, the needle is going straight down into that on the index card, so that you have a perfect seam that you're starting. So you can check your 1/4 inch seam by sewing down this line and watching the line where you're sewing, and then when you're done sewing, you can take it off and you can see that you've sewn completely down that line accurately. So I use this foot because this is the foot I am most accurate with. So if I had a foot that didn't have a flange on it, I find myself to be a little less accurate, and I wobble back and forth across the line. But as you can see, with this particular foot, I do very, very well. And again, for my machine, this is the 57D with this flange on the side, so that our guide right on the side, so that I can make an accurate seam. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to do our half square triangles. Okay, so we've got these two pieces for our half square triangles, and they are 6.5 inch squares. So what we're going to do is we're going to take, I've got my two different stacks. This is the light, this is the dark, and I'm going to place them right sides together. As you can see, I've taken one of them and put them on the right sides. I'm using a marking pencil, a marking pencil, and I'm going to take this 6.5 inch ruler right here, because it's got this guide down it. I'm going to put it onto the side of the fabric, because that's going to give me the straight edge, and I'm going to move it down to where I am right on the corner here of this fabric. And I'll tell you what, when you go to start marking, if you start at that corner, you're going to have some problems. So I work from the inside out and do my line, and then I come and move this one to this side, line it up on this line with this, and now I'm going to get it to match up to the line that I'm already drawn, because now I've got two lines to do, and I'm going to take it from the center and go down here. And this just means that I'm not going to have quite so much of a distortion. If I try and start here, a lot of times this is what happens to you. Even if you have your ruler down, you're going to get some like that, and it's not going to be accurate. So this line right here is the one we're going to sew on each side of it. We're going to take a seam down this side straight, and then a 1/4 inch seam on this side, and then this line will be in the middle. So when you're using your guide, this line should be on the outside of your 1/4 inch foot, or the line that you're using to match up to your 1/4 inch foot. So let's go ahead and sew. I'm going to bring it, put it under my needle, and I have got the this right here on the line, and I'm going to begin to sew. You don't have to worry about backtracking right here, because we are going to be cutting this down. So I've gotten to this side, and what I'm going to do is flip this up and pivot. I pull it out just a little bit so that I don't have to cut my thread and pull it out any longer. So now I'm lined up again on this line, and I'm ready to sew. So first thing, when I sit down, what I would normally do is pair all of these up and draw my lines first on all of these. So I could just continuously sew through all of these pieces. We're not going to sew all of them here, because that would be time consuming, and I want to get on to the next step for you so that you can see. So I've cut this off. We've got the line down the center, and we've got the two sewn lines on each side. So now what I'm going to do is give this a little press, because it is to set it, just to make sure we've got it set. Then I'm back over here. Okay, so now I have lined up this from corner to corner, and I am going to cut down the middle of this. And now I have two half square triangles. So what I will do next is I will take those to the iron, and I will press to the dark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press to the dark. So I'm going to gently lay my iron down and press towards the darker side, so that my seam would not show through if it's a lighter seam. So I'm just going to press back and forth. Everything's to this side. I want to make sure this seam is good and flat. Then I'm going to do the same thing with this one, and all the consecutive ones that you do. So each of these squares yields you two triangles, two half square triangles. So once you've got the half square triangles complete, then we've made these big enough so that you can trim them down to the size that you need. And why I like to do that is because then you get a real accurate piece to sew together when you make your project. So I'm going to take the 6.5 inch ruler and look for the line directly down the center again, and I'm going to place that in the middle of this, down this line, to make sure that these lines are exactly on top of each other. Okay, so this particular piece, the half square triangles, are need to be squared up to 5.5. Let me make sure that's exactly right. Yep. They will be 5.5-inch squares when we just to square them up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to square up one side. If in fact you don't have this one, we have quite a bit of extra fabric for you. But if you don't, then you need to make sure that you have enough fabric on each side to square it up accurately. So I'm squaring up this one side first, and then what I'm going to do is flip it around, and now I'm going to measure for my 5.5-inch cut. So I'm going to make sure that I have it lined up on the center line, and that I've got 5.5 on this side and 5.5 on this side. So because you have that seam in there, this is a little can move a little bit. So what you want to do is you want to hold it very, very still and hard, and try and get it as accurate as you can, so that you don't have any wobbling in your thing. So now this one's cut to 5.5, and it's ready to put in our into our quilt. I'm going to do the other one just so we have two of them done. I'm going to do it again. Again, I'm looking for the line down the center of the half square triangle, and I'm going to match that up with my ruler line. Again, I'm going to go to one side to the best I can so that I have the most I need when I do the accurate measurement. This is not trying to get the accurate measurement yet. I'm trying just to get two of the sides straight so that I can do the accurate measurement cut. So now I'm going to flip it around. I know these two sides are my accurate cut. Line up the center up and down the middle of this, and then on my 5.5 this way and this way. Let's say that if you were making a lot of these and you wanted to make sure you remembered 5.5, you could mark on here with an expo marker, like an arrow to the line you're trying to get to, or you could use a piece of tape or something if you wanted to make sure that if you're cutting a lot of it. The other thing that you might is you could use an expo marker to go like this to make sure you got this line, so that you know which line you're cutting to, so that you make sure that you are getting it accurate. They also have a lot of different sized rulers. So if you were going to cut maybe, for me, it's about 25 to 30 of the same size. A lot of times I would buy that ruler because I'm going to be using it so many different times, and I know that I will be using it again. 5.5 is also the size of a lot of blocks that we use, and so it's nice to have a 5.5-inch ruler, but I gave you the 6.5 because it really is the most common one there is. So let's get this lined up. I'm going to make sure that's up the side. I've got my 5.5 there, my 5.5 there, and I am going to hold it very tight and do my rotary cutting to make this block accurate to 5.5. Because this is a beginner quilt, we have given you more to cut off. A lot of times it is really just like 3 threads on the piece of fabric. So you need to see how accurate, how much extra you have before you go to cutting, because if you don't have extra, it doesn't do you any good to square up the block. You have to press it more to make sure that you've got the seams open and pressed down good, and then we'll get to a good start. So that's the half square triangles that will be going around the edge of the quilt. We need to have 16 done before we can sew it together. So let's make our 16.
Do you want to show it?
Yep, we can show it. These are the half square triangles that are going to go out around the edge of the 4-patch and then the heart. So these are the 16 you're going to need to put around the outside of the quilt. So make all 16 of these, and then we'll move on to the 4-patch. All right, let's move on to our 4-patch. Okay, we've got our 2 sizes, our 2 squares that we need right here. We've got the dark and the light, and we're going to make these into 4 patches. As you can see, some of these have a little bit of a curled edge, so I'm going to hit them with the iron before I start. They must have been kind of too close together in the bag that we had them in. So sometimes you might need to press your pieces before you even start to make sure that they're accurate. Again, this one is one that needs a little, these must have been tucked up somehow. Okay, let's get started. So we need to make 12 4 patches. And so we will take, for here, we're going to take one. So this is what the 4 patch is going to look like when we're completed. It will be 4 pieces, 2 dark, 2 light, and this is what the 4 patch would look like. So what I do is I get all of my pieces laid out in front of me that I need to put together, and then I lay them out and I fold them over on top of one another, so that I have I have one that has the dark on top, and I have the one that has the light on top. And I would match all of these up with right sides together, so that I'm ready to sew and chain piece all of these. So, and what chain piecing is sewing one seam right after the next to get them all sewn up. So again, we have the next one. Oh, this must have 2 pieces of fabric on it, and that's why, oh, it did. So you see, I noticed that we had the top up, it didn't look like the one next to it. So we must have had something different. So I would lay all these out, or a few of them out, so that I could chain piece them. So I'm showing you that I'm chain piecing these. Since they're so small, I am actually not putting a pin in them. If you feel like you need a pin, you can. I feel like for me it does some distortion, and I have to pull it out anyway before I'm rolling over it with the flange. And so I personally just do not pin. I just line them up. And we're also going to be, again, cutting these down to the exact right size that we need. So we don't have to worry that we're going to have a little extra left over. Okay, so once I get everything chain pieced, I know a lot of people just go ahead and flip this around and piece it right here. I personally like to make sure that it's very accurate, so I am going to use a little bit different of a method. So I am going to cut all my threads in between. I'm also going to press to the dark on each of these. So here I press to the dark. Press to the dark. So, but when I put them together, I'm going to put them like this. So what that does is had me to be able to nest these seams together. So I like to use a pin called a forked pin. I'm going to put it over the white so you can see. So what that is it has 2 prongs on it, and it has like a little connector to it. So how you use a forked pin is you precisely line up these 2 seams and really push them together so that they're very nested with one another. And then you pin with the seam right in the center of your pin. And so you can see I've pinned right down the center of this sewing seam. So then what I'm going to do is come over here and sew it. I leave this pin way out over here, and I do not take it out when I'm piecing. These pins are very, very thin, and so you don't usually have to take them out when you're piecing. So I would pin all of them that I'm going to sew, and then sew them one right after the other. Chain piece them. So now that I am done with this one, I'm going to take the forked pin out, and we will be able to see that this is a perfect match in the center on those two seams that the seams match. So now what I'm going to do is come over here and press this and make sure I get a good press on it so that it's flat and even. You can see that those really came out great in the center. Again, this will be trimmed to 5.5. So I'm going to come over here. This time I am looking for this line and this line to be very, to be on the sewing seams so that I can make sure that I have it aligned exactly as I would like it. So this seam is going to be, this line is going to actually be right there because it's a little bigger than what I need, than what we need. So we're going to cut it down to 5.5 inches since it needs to be the same inch line as that. But I'm going to use these lines to make sure that the block is, that I'm cutting it square to the way that it's sewn. Again, I cut 2 sides so that I have my straight edges. I flip them around to make sure that they're in the right spot. Go to my 5.5 inch block, make sure this line and this line match up, and they do. And I'm going to cut this way. So now I have got a perfect 4-patch that's 5.5 by 5.5 that meets nicely in the center. So that's how you make the 4-patch, and I think you will enjoy making these. It's one of my favorite blocks, and it's so versatile because once you learn this, you could make a whole quilt with nothing but 4 patches. And likewise with the half square triangle we mastered, you're able to use that for all that particular block for a whole quilt also. So they're very fun and versatile. I hope you are successful at doing your 4 patches and this next step to the quilt. Soon the next step will be appliquing the center and sewing the center together and appliquing the heart on top. So join us again for the next session. Have a great day. Happy sewing.